Can you please tell me where and when you apply for the non-lucrative visa?
I applied in New York City and just recently in June of this year.
And how old are you?
I am 36.
Well, that's super young. That's pretty interesting, as many people are in retirement age. So for the
Yep.
ones who think being in their 30s and too early to apply for NLV, here we have a successful case. What initially prompted you to apply for the non-lucrative visa?
So one of the things that I sort of took a look at my career in corporate America and just sort of realized the level of burnout that I was feeling, and really just finding a way to be able to step back, reevaluate my life, my career, like what does the future hold? And when I did some research with different visas in the EU, I stumbled upon the NLV. Take time away, travel a little bit, immerse myself in a new place, in a new pace, language, culture, all those things were really important to me when I thought about this time in my life.
Maybe you go back to work sometimes later in life.
Yes.
What were the most important documents required for the NLV application? Proof of funding.
Proof of funding, I actually used a high yield savings account to show that I had the funds needed. And that was enough of like a requirement in terms of showing the IPREM. They had also asked to see my checking account. So I think part of where potentially the consulate is ensuring is that you're not getting this money funded from maybe a family member or from a place that isn't yours. So I think that they wanted to just kind of look at the spending in one place and like look at the savings to kind of ensure that it lined up. So that was actually a piece of document that I didn't realize that they were going to need once we got to the appointment.
Did you have to show for a specific window of time?
Yeah, so 3 months of the savings and 3 months of the checking.
Let's go with the health insurance. How did you solve this requirement?
I actually found the health insurance to be one of the easiest parts of the process. I did some price comparison of different companies and ended up with Sanitas. Felt like that they offered the best rates, but also my medical sort of status is fairly simple at the moment and of my age. So really just got on a call with a representative. They helped me ensure that I picked the right one for the visa. And it was a very seamless process.
Moving forward to the medical certificate, how did you manage to provide it?
I was able to find a template that another consulate shares with its applicants. I believe it was the San Francisco consulate. So honestly, it was really simple. My doctor looked at it. We had an annual checkup and it was it. It was like a really, turnkey situation where they signed it, they stamped it, and I was on my way. I mean, there was definitely a conversation had where they had mentioned that they hadn't seen before, but when I explained exactly what it was, they just seemed really receptive to it.
What about the FBI background check?
FBI background check, in terms of just like getting the fingerprints and getting the apostille, was also like a very easy process. But what had occurred that I never experienced before were my fingerprints. It took a really long time for my fingerprints to scan, which I thought was really odd and a little concerning, quite honestly. But they finally got the fingerprints scanned, but it took way longer than I expected it to. I thought like it's like a very easy digital process, but you have to have like the right pressure put on the machine to get the right fingerprint markings. So that actually was like the only frustrating part of the experience. But other than that, I used a digital service that when I got the scan, I uploaded it into I guess their system, and then they sent off and did the apostille for me. So I didn't actually have to deal with like the State Department.
Well, one of the frequently asked questions by especially senior people that their fingerprints fade over time and they have like illegible fingerprints. I have some content on Spainguru and you know, some potential solutions for that. So how did you go about gathering and preparing your application materials?
One of the first things I did was just create a timeline and really outline what would take the most amount of time. And the way that I understood it was getting the FBI apostille and the translations with all of the documents were really going to be the ones that take more time or was not in my control. So once I put that timeline together and worked back from the date that I was hoping to get an appointment, because I think that's actually one of the more interesting learning experiences of this process, was that in New York City, you cannot ask for a certain appointment date. They just give you one. So I knew that I had to get all of my documents in place really before I asked for an appointment. So I used a date that I had in mind, but that was not given to me yet. And once I figured out that timeline, I realized, okay, this is going to take probably safely anywhere between 4 to 5 months, because I wasn't in any rush, and was able to really kind of like backtrack from there. So that once I knew, okay, I would have my translations probably done by this date, that's probably when I should reach out to the consulate for an appointment.
Something I didn't ask you, did you apply for yourself or you go with someone else? Did you have to get marriage certificate, for example, or duplicate of birth certificate?
Yeah, so I applied with my husband and we had to do the marriage certificate. The marriage certificate, and we're newlyweds, but just to be safe, I wanted to get a marriage certificate this year. So part of the marriage certificate is that you have to go to City Hall, get a new certificate, then it needs to go to the city clerk, which is where you get the city clerk stamp, and only then you can get it apostilled. And so that just like takes like, it doesn't take a lot of time. Again, it's like 30 minutes here, an hour there, but you have to go to different places within New York to do so. So that is just like, you have to just account for it essentially. So once we did all that, that was like pretty easy. But birth certificate, no, it wasn't asked of us, and you know, we don't have any children.
So contrary to the FBI background check, I assume you you obtained the federal apostille versus marriage certificate. You could go with the state apostille.
So the marriage certificate, we used the state, yes.
And for the FBI background check, you got the federal apostille, correct?
Federal, exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you face any unexpected challenges during the application process?
I'd say the biggest challenge that we experienced was when we had initially, went to our first appointment at the consulate. We were asked for additional documentation to show that we wouldn't be working. It was just, I think, a little bit of a miscommunication with the agent at the consulate. We didn't provide documentation from both of us. It was just myself that went ahead and provided that, as I was a primary applicant and my husband was applying as a dependent. And so when we went through that process, they didn't tell us, okay, this is going to lead to a dismissal of your application and paperwork. We only found out about the dismissal several weeks later. And then we had to go through the process again of finding a new appointment and doing the reapplication.
So you weren't required for extra documentation, and they didn't give you 10 days. You were just like dismissed.
No. So this is where it was confusing. We were given the 10-day extension, or
okay.
Ask, but the ask was provide additional documentation that you won't be working. So I went ahead and provided documentation from my side.
Okay, for your side, but
primary.
not for your husband.
Yes, because
and that's when they said, okay, this is not enough documentation, so you are denied,
dismissed.
Or
so
dismissed.
I think that's kind of where I think some of the conversation in the Facebook group was interesting because no one had heard of that before. And I tried to provide like that like additional information is like there's denial, but then there's also just dismissal. And so that's where we were in this like interesting limbo where they dismissed it but said that we could reapply.
And you had all your documents within the window of validity still.
Exactly.
Able to reapply, or any of the
Exactly.
documents was expired by the time of the reapplication?
It was just the medical certificate.
That is normally valid for 3 months, right? So
Correct.
that was expired at the time of the reapplication. Did you have to get a new one?
Yeah, we had to just go back to our doctor and explain that, you know, this happened, and they were mildly annoyed, I think, but they were fine with it. They didn't have any concerns, obviously, but it was just one more step within this particular process.
What tips can you offer for navigating the appointment and interview process at the consulate?
You know, I'd say in general, just being really sincere and honest with your answers when they ask you why you want to move, what you plan to do there. And then they save the last few minutes of that appointment time to just ask you why. And it's a really good opportunity for you to really just appeal your case for the visa. And then that was it, really. You know, they don't really have like a series of questions or interrogation.
So in your case, the main issue was your potential to work, okay?
Correct.
So can you clarify what documentation you provided to be able to be accepted?
Yes, it was a notarized affidavit of no work. So just really a statement that your job cannot be completed in Spain, and that you are intending to resign before you leave and before you're, you know, on the visa. And then proof from the place of work that you are not going to be working there.
Okay, and this is something that you produce for yourself and for your husband?
Yes, that's what we ended up doing.
Did you use the services of a lawyer or consultant, or did you manage everything on your own?
We worked with a consultant. We worked with someone who provided insight, tips, but essentially everything else we did on our own.
Great. How important was Spainguru's Non Lucrative Visa Facebook group during the process?
It was a really good place to, you know, gut check other people's experiences and local experiences, given, you know, there are a lot of New Yorkers there looking for this and going through the same process. And it really helps set expectations. So just hearing from folks within the same timeline as us was really nice to kind of like have just almost like a support system. So that was really great to have that kind of on hand.
You are underlining the importance of talking to people from the same consulate and applying at the same time, because things change a lot in time, even for the same consulate. As we mentioned before, some requirements changed from last year, and also requirements change from consulate to consulate. What would you have done differently in your application process, knowing what you know now?
I think the only thing I could really think of is maybe not taking so much time to do it. In the sense that I don't think we needed 5 months to really prepare everything. It kind of weighs on you a little bit to always be in like this sense of like paperwork and like the cycle of like, you know, getting everything together. I think now knowing what I know, I think we could have easily have done this probably in a month or 2 months.
How long did the entire process take from start to finish?
I would say it took 5 months. Because our first appointment was in May, we started acquiring documents in February to ensure the 90-day validity with some of those items. So really, you know, if we knew we were going to apply the second time in June, we would have started the document processing phase probably in April instead.
From the moment you submitted the documents, you got the appointment, you submitted the documents, and so on, how long did it take?
The first go around, it was kind of not quite applicable because of the 10-day and then the dismissal. But the second time around, it took 2 weeks.
So how far in advance did you choose your date to move to Spain from, when you fill the application form? And did the consulate respect that choice?
We picked a date it was between, I think it was 3 months before our appointment date. And the consulate was super receptive to that. No issues there.
What advice would you give to someone just starting to consider applying for the Spanish non-lucrative visa?
One of the things that I was told when I started this process was, if you want to do something different with your life and you want to start a new chapter, go for it. There's the worst thing can happen is you're denied. That is the worst thing that can happen. And aside from that, you really have nothing to lose. It's a fantastic experience to just kind of like really put everything together and, find a new way of thinking about like what life could look like, how you can really experience something new, and just going for it. And I think that that's kind of the biggest thing that I took from this experience is it felt very daunting, very scary. I didn't hear of most of these types of documents when I had first started this experience. I had no idea what a apostille was before any of this. So just going to learn a lot about yourself and your resilience when it comes to something like this, because in order to, change your life and move to another country, there's more to it than just buying the airplane ticket.
Maybe a little bonus question, since you are talking so much about the preparation phase and the decision-making phase. Taxes is one of the things that deserves a lot of consideration. Is that something you got advice for?
Not yet. We're not going to be under any tax requirements this year. So we'll be crossing that bridge once we're settled and, looking at what the next year is going to look like. But yeah, that's definitely on my mind.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing. Apparently YouTube says you're gonna love watching this video right here. I think you should watch it